Jarabi, Tala, Yorajana, Ale, Mason, Segima. Nderini ngabe diza ni jarabi ma feganyalo nyina nderini ngabe diza ni kanu I want to know.
Okay, hi everybody, welcome back to Africa for Dummies, as always hosted by me, Nathan, and Zenge.
Hi everybody.
Thank you so much for joining us again and all the support from the last episode. Please make sure to follow the podcast and also follow our Spotify playlist called Africa for Dummies, which hosts various African artists. Today is a very interesting topic, how I never knew I was black. Wait a minute, I'm black?
Yeah, we're actually going to be talking about negritude.
Negro what?
Yeah, well, negritude basically is an ideology which was largely propagated by Francophone intellectuals from the 1930s and 60s. Basically, try to form a sense of common universalisms or essentialisms that unites all people of African descent and the people in the African diaspora as well, and basically try to define the essentialisms of what it means to be African, like Africanness, blackness, and they basically did this through political and cultural commonalities, so colonialism, slavery, oppression, and stuff like that. So this was mostly led by a guy called Leopold, and it kind of merged with the whole decolonization narratives, black consciousness. Yeah. And Leopold, by the way, is first president of Senegal. Yeah.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Today's episode is not only special because it's our second episode in Spy, it's also special because we have our very first guest here today. So I'm going to start and introduce a friend of mine who is an Afro-German. So it'd be really great to get her perspective. Her name is Lory. Everybody welcome Lory.
Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Yeah, and I've got two guests with me here actually. We've got Mwiza, who's a Rhodes economics graduate in Rhodes in South Africa, Rhodes University. And he's also a master's degree student in international relations. And we've got Fatouma from the Gambia.
Hello.
Yeah, so what Zenge said about Leopold Senghor, the statement that he made, kind of also made another statement where he said, I became conscious of belonging to the basic category of Negro only once in Paris. So this leads us to the question, what does it mean to be black? Is it just like a race or does it come with political undertones? And since you're the one who designed the question, answer this question first.
Okay. Yeah, for me, it's kind of interesting because it's like a journey. Because most people in Africa, at least for me, you kind of realize you're black when you're in when the majority of the place you're in is not black. Because when you're in Africa, it's almost like you're the default race in a way. So yeah, I just wanted to see what everyone thinks about that. Let's start with Mwiza. What do you think about that? How true is this? Is there any like political undertones to being black? And what does black mean in general?
I think being black is it's an identity. It's an identity. It carries a lot. There's more to just race based off what we understand.
You have to have like a political angle to being black. Are there political things you have to do if you're black, like political obligations? Like if there's a Black Lives Matter protest, you kind of
obviously you have to. We always have to stand up for being black and defend our race. But I will agree that this only happens when we're taken out of our natural environments and we become minorities. It's only then that the question of being black is actually imposed on us, like we have to defend what we are, the way we are seen. And just back to it being an identity.
Yeah. All right. So let's see what Lory has to say. Lory is an Afro-German, born in Germany, lived in Germany. So because this is all about so far, me and Mwiza have said that when you move from a majority black country to a minority black country, you're more aware of you being black, but you're a majority white country. So how does this fit in with you?
Yeah, so as I said, I've been born here. So I've lived in Germany for 25 years. And most of the time, for example, in a classroom or within my friendships or everywhere, I've been the only black girl. So this is where I realized that I am black. So I realized that I had to defend myself, as Mwiza said, that you have to stand up, defend yourself when something doesn't go right. So then I really realized that I was really black. So because majority, like around my friends or neighborhood, they're all white. So I couldn't really relate that of majority, as Zinga said. Yeah, you came from the majority and came to a place where you are a minority. So I've been through that like for 25 years. That I realized that I'm black. Yes.
About Fatima, what do you have to say about that?
Okay, so definitely when we were like that moment when you realized you're black, I've had like I think 10 billion moments where I'm like, whoa, okay, I'm black. This is not gonna go up.
Yeah.
I think one of the most profound ones would be a family road trip from Zim going to South Africa.
Right.
And we were in a white town, got stopped by white cops. And
This is in South
my
Africa.
dad's yeah, in South Africa. My
Okay.
dad's a diplomat, so all of our plates were diplomatic plates. So technically, we couldn't be stopped by the police for any reason. But
Yeah.
he still, respected the uniform and stopped. We ended up there for 2 hours because he didn't believe that we were diplomats. And I did not understand for the life of me. So when we finally start driving away, I start picking my dad's brain like, yo, why did that just happen? Is he psycho or like, are we mad? And he's like, Fatima, we're black. Whoa, that's like real,
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I'm
Literally, just
black.
like, hey, just in case you forgot. And that's in
So
Africa,
I
huh?
think, I think it comes with political undertones, but I think you guys are right in the sense that, yeah, I've had a lot of my like black experiences in South Africa, but I've also had it outside where something happens and you're kind of like, whoa,
Yeah.
oh, they think this because I'm black. It's really, it's messed up. It's
It's like a shock to the system.
It really
Yeah.
is. I
I
could
don't.
also support that, especially even with like South Africa.
Yeah.
Like I moved there at
And
the
South
end
Africa
of
is
my
kind of weird because it's actually Africa,
yeah,
because and the majority is black, but then there's still that
exactly. They still
awakening
have
that
that influence,
yeah.
white influence there. So when I moved, like I remember, like primary school, you're a kid, you don't really notice these things. Only when I moved and I was in a classroom and I realized that I hold a certain position, there's a certain level of respect to everything I say, and I started realizing that, when you look around, you see the way the white kids are being treated. There's like you're clearly on a level of some sort.
Yeah.
There's a pecking order to it. What does Nathan have to say about this?
I was going to say like yeah, I think I've experienced what everyone has said here. Like for example, I was once at a gas station, and I just like sometimes when you're like in a foreign country, like sometimes you just forget, like you're just going about your day, like oh, it's every day is every day, and
Yeah.
then you have these random moments where people just like remind you, oh wait, I'm different, bro. Like I'm different. So like I remember walking into a gas station and I'm looking for some juice and stuff like that, and the store clerk just keeps following me around. So initially, the thing is, I was so what do you call this, like, gullible, or I guess is the word you can say, because I was
Yeah.
like, yo, okay, maybe this guy wants to clean up over here. So I stepped out, went to the other side.
Because you immediately don't think that it's
I
your
don't.
color.
I didn't even think that. I thought that. Then he comes and follows me. I'm like, okay, let me try and move the other way, and he comes and follows me there again. So then it starts showing like, okay, this guy clearly doesn't want me to be in the store. So I just quickly like bought my stuff and left. But yeah, I mean, it's that's when, like, for me when I was in Zambia, I never really thought too much about it. But like when you come here, it's different. But my thing is, I don't know if being black should come with political undertones. I don't know.
That's
Like
the part that I'm having
exactly. Like should
that
I?
means it's like how like Americans treat people, that the black vote and stuff
Yeah.
like that, like the black
Yeah.
community, like everyone just has some monolith type of behavior. So I don't know. Lory said that growing up, she's kind of had to be able to defend herself because she's in a position where she's part of the minority and she's aware of it. So to what extent is it actually a political issue, being black? Is it, how many things? Is it just a race, or is it, like when politicians come to someone, like in America, I don't know how it is in Germany, maybe, when black is not only just a race, but it's also a political contingent. You know what I mean? It's, it's like, what if you are conservative and black, and what if you are liberal and black? What if you are for abortion or against abortion, but you're black? But then one political party thinks they're the vanguard of black people, so treating them as one. So what do you think about that?
What I can say, it It's actually related to a political extent. For example, the Black Lives Matter movement. As I said before, there are certain situations that I always have to defend myself. That I always have to. It's always like visible that it's like you don't belong here.
Mm.
So you have to stand up. You have to really, really like raise your voice to get attention. That okay, hey, I'm just not only black, but I'm a human. Okay, I live in
Mm.
Germany, and I'm also a German citizen, so I also have the right for certain things. A right for good education, a right to vote, and
Mm,
extra and other stuff. Yeah.
Yeah,
mm,
yeah,
mhm,
that's true. So I guess this is the perfect time to just extend this to how countries are dealing with blackness and blackness in the diaspora or blackness in Africa. Uh, Ghana basically has a foreign policy, or maybe you can call it an immigration policy, where they have an express avenue for black people in the diaspora to return to Ghana. So I guess what I'm trying to say is, should black people all over the world be welcome to come back to Africa, or should Africa be an asylum for black people everywhere? Can Africa be an actual, the utopian homeland for black people, or should we be more realistic about it?
I think it should, and I think it's a bit strange that it's only Ghana that's doing this.
mhm.
Isn't that concerning? I mean, as Africans, surely we should, like everyone,
Even
every other
Africa
race.
has its own problems, no? Why should Africa just let in people
But that's the
because they're
thing,
black?
like I feel like with Ghana, they've seen that when they make it attractive for black people to come back to Africa, they can gain a lot from that because now they're getting a whole bunch of labor, experienced labor, these graduates, these are
Mm.
musicians, artists. Like it's going to benefit them in the long run.
Do Africans actually like African Americans? Because Liberia, inside the
Oh boy.
yeah, historically had an issue with Americo-Liberians.
Mhm,
Yeah, I think everyone knows the history of American slaves coming into Liberia, and then they were sort of like the privileged, but now it's sort of balanced out. But there's a history of superiority and inferiority complex, and I think Ghana is trying to fight that. Yeah, I think Ghana is really trying to fight that because there are lots of African Americans that have actually heeded to this right of abode situation. But I don't know what would someone that's German, Afro-German like Lory think
mhm,
about this.
Um, I think returning back to Africa is good, especially in Congo. It's really, really demanded. Like
mhm,
Mm.
people from the diaspora to come back to especially to show the experience they have learned abroad and to practice it in Africa to change everything or to put some changes or add some knowledge so that the country can move on or the country can progress in several things or areas. I think returning back to Africa is beneficial. Yeah, because you learn a lot from here and come back home and you can practice it and spread the knowledge. I think it's very beneficial.
You think people in
I-
the diaspora have an attachment to Africa this in a different way that say non people of non-African descent have an attachment to Africa? Because some people would just be like, oh well, African Americans probably think of Africa the same way that regular white Americans would think of Africa. Or is there a special connection there? Or is it just case by case? Some want to come to Africa, some don't. In some cases, they've lived there for a very, very long time.
yeah, like I think we definitely do need to be a bit realistic. It's dope that I like black people are coming back. Like, of course, like I'm not going to be against that, but looking at the current situation right now, we have a situation where a lot of Africans are trying to leave Africa. So,
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Africa is actually trying to leave Africa, but then
Africans are actually trying to leave Africa. So let's try to fix the situation that's going on at home, because I feel like it's just going to exacerbate the problem. Because generally, when you look at migration, the reason why people are leaving is simply because the what do you call this again? The potential income in the host country is going to be higher than where they're coming from.
yeah,
So
there's a pull factor to it.
there's a significant pull factor to it. We do have wars going on, so I do think that we should, because at the same time, I do agree with what Mwiza and Lory are saying, because Africa, when you look at um, what do you call this, migration and all that type, like one of the things they talk about is the brain drain. So
Yes.
like Africa is losing quite significantly because of brain drain. Like people just come and they poach the smartest, the brightest, the most talented. Or look at soccer is just the perfect example. They just come and pick the best
True.
and all that type of a thing. So it's like I feel like we need to
Then you win the Africa Cup. Then you win the World Cup.
France, right?
Don't mention any names.
Yeah, so it's like you
Name
do,
the team.
yeah, you do need to fix a lot of what's going on first before you start bringing in. Granted, it will attract a lot of foreign direct investment, perhaps because certain American people come with
Yeah.
investment, of course. But I think to make it significant, I think we need to make Africa more attractive.
Yeah.
Yeah. So a quote from a French novelist from Guadeloupe. Her name is Maurice Condi. She said, "Today we can no longer stick to the role of innocent victims. It is quite easy to be a victim. It is much more difficult to adapt that the people who bring misery over us can also be black. We must acknowledge that we are responsible adults." So this brings us to the question of, are there different shades of black, and how do Africans discriminate amongst each other in Africa and in the diaspora? Is it through colorism, tribalism, and can we talk about that for a second? I actually want to get to hear Lory's perspective, because I always felt that people that were born and raised in a foreign country, like
Mhm.
I don't know, I always have a little bit
I
of,
mean, for her, it's not really foreign, but yeah.
yeah, I mean, oh yeah, yeah, so yeah, but I always just have a little bit of empathy, because it's like, do you ever feel like you're stuck in between, in the sense that you can't really go hang out with the Africans because the Africans are going to be like, oh, you're just, you know, you're German. Do you, or when you go to hang out with like the Germans, they're like, oh, look at this African. Like, what, you know what I'm saying? Like, do you ever feel like there's like we as Africans in particular can also be a bit, can discriminate a bit?
To be honest, in the Congolese community, there's a lot of discrimination, especially colorism or tribalism. The
Hmm.
worst part is tribalism. I think in Congo we have more than 200 tribes.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So yeah, and there's one tribe. Some tribes think they're superior than other tribes. So there's like wars and fights and everything. Even in Europe, it still exists. Like
So
especially tribalism.
even when they
Yeah.
go to Europe, the Congolese community discriminates amongst each other.
Yes, that
Wow.
discriminates each other, and colorism as well,
Mhm.
um, especially between the ladies. Once they see a lighter shade lady or light skinned lady, they say, okay, this girl has more privilege because she's light skinned. And it shocks me, it really shocks me to hear that. And I'm like,
Yeah, that's
wow,
true.
that's very very funny to hear. So there are also some small movements in Congo who are against colorism, against tribalism, and
Mm.
they're trying to approach these issues and trying to fight against that. Yeah. So
So there's at least there's a silver lining to it.
Wait. Do you guys think that we can solve that issue? By the way, speaking
Which is
from a Tonga to a fellow Tonga.
yeah.
no, I think tribe is tribe is messed up because I have an issue with tribe in two ways. First,
What's your problem with tribe, bro?
it's terrible because one, it's a foreign thing. It's a foreign construct. One, and then the
Mm.
word tribe itself mildly racist. I'm not gonna lie, because think about it. Tribes are ethnic groups, right?
Okay.
You never hear them talking about the Basque tribe or the Bavarian tribe or the Welsh tribe, but for Africa, it's a tribe. So the people that created this whole concept of tribe are anthropologists who saw Africans as primordial, as savage. You only use the word tribe when you're talking about football hooligans or when you're talking about, savage people. So that word itself is
I've heard of some German tribes.
Yeah,
they call
gypsies.
themselves tribes.
Gypsies.
I've heard some
I've
German
never
tribes.
heard of that.
I've heard of some tribes in South America. I've heard of.
South America, yes, but not European tribes.
I'm pretty sure there's some German tribes.
I've never heard anyone say Scottish tribe or say
Okay.
nation or ethnic groups or something like that. So that's one thing.
Mhm.
The second thing is how they were constructed. Because tribe is also the same as divide and rule. You know what I mean? Because
Mm.
you have situations where, like, say, here's an example. If Nathan is a chief, and then I'm threatening his grip on power in some area, and we have like similar linguistics, but we are still rivals. Colonial power will come in, and then if Nathan is more like amicable to him because he wants to exploit Nathan's copper, he's probably going to give Nathan more powers, and he's going to give Nathan more weapons. First, crush me, maintain Nathan's grip, and then you inflate Nathan's jurisdiction, and then therefore you plant a flag there. Nathan will be a cooperator with colonialism to save himself and also save the colonial structure. Therefore, Nathan will be my chief, even though originally that never happened. So what I'm trying to say is that modern tribes, for example, in Nigeria, the Hausa tribe, within the Hausa, there's hundreds and hundreds of different, ethnic groups, nations, city-states within them. But the colonial structure made it such that they promoted one person that was amicable to colonial interests and just declared that to be a tribe. So you simplify things beyond, and Rwanda is a beautiful example. You put one over the other, and then you create your own problems. So tribe is kind of messed up. So the question about Tongas, Tongas are fine. For listeners, Tongas is the Tonga tribe is a tribe in southern Zambia, predominantly.
Yeah, I don't know. I find that very interesting that like even
what does Mwiza think, because he's
okay.
about the Tonga tribe
amongst Africans. You can weigh in on the Tonga issue, but because I know
the Tonga issue is a bit of a touchy one, especially at the moment.
Yeah, especially now, man. Jeez.
Yeah. So I don't wanna step on any toes. Yeah. I might get kicked off the podcast and edited out. But yeah, I do agree with you to some extent. I do.
Yeah. I don't know. I just find it interesting that like even when people leave, like as Lory said, everybody's trying to reach a certain level of success. Like most people leave their countries because they're trying to better life, right? Like I was watching a documentary about Ethiopian people that migrate to Saudi Arabia and how they have to walk like that whole distance. And one of the things that the guys were saying when they were interviewing them is that while we're migrating, there's still tribal wars going on whilst migrating. And
as you're migrating,
as you both realize that
on
we're
the same canoe there, on the same boat, you're killing each other over
literally. Like one guy said an attack happened where they were literally reaching the shore, and one of the rival tribal groups sees them and they start like trying to sink the boat. And I'm like, yo, you guys are both, you both realize that the situation back home is not good, and you still carry this mentality.
You're actually exporting the tribe with you.
Exporting tribalism to a certain degree. So I don't know, man. It's something that is really. I feel like it's something that's super super deep, man.
Like, which is funny because I feel like when people from a certain nationality, like for me, from my experience, people from my country, when we leave the country, there's a greater sense of unity because, and I think that's the case. And it's funny because, in certain African countries, you find that people in the minority will be accused of only keeping with each other. But when you flip it and, you put yourself in a country where you are the minority, you see less difference amongst your tribes. And people, they will then obviously accuse you of keeping amongst only, Zambians or Rwandans or Congolese, because you've kind of flipped it. In Zambia, for example, you'll be like, oh, why are the Chinese keeping together? Why are the white people only keeping together? But like whenever you're in a minority, I guess what Lory is saying, you kind of realize you're kind of aware of these things and aware of your difference. So you kind of want to look out for each other, perhaps. But then again, this is a different side to it, exporting tribalism. You kind of pretend that there's no tribalism within, like from the outside, but there's actually tribalism within. Is that right, Lory, or have I misquoted you?
Yeah, it is. It's even worse here. So
actually, I found it interesting what you said. I didn't think that there would be like tribalism in the Congolese community even here, man. That's so new to me, man.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it exists.
I'm going to introduce another quote by Paul Gilroy, who wrote a book called The Black Atlantic Modernity and Double Consciousness in 1993. And I took an extract from that book called, basically it said Double Consciousness, basically about slaves having to adopt European and Black cultural identity to make sense of themselves. That's a very powerful quote. And I guess the question is, we've talked about discrimination in Africa, the idea of Blackness inside and outside Africa. So let me ask a conclusive question. Are Africans just cultural mutants, both abroad and at home, due to their history, or are they not? The whole idea of being in the diaspora, having to mix in with the majority culture and you being part of a minority culture, and also those who are in Africa due to their colonial history, perhaps because you inherit some things that are British, the language, etc. What do you think about that, Mwiza, having studied two
I
different
think I'll
countries?
take this back. I'll take this back to like the concept of identity. It's all about perception.
Mm.
So I feel like as a black person in Europe, there's
Okay.
this perception that people have about you. And then, so basically, you have to alter yourself in order to gain a certain level of respect. It's basically
Kind of
like
have to fit that
you.
perception.
I feel like as a black person, let me give an example. If I walk into a room, there's certain in order to gain the trust and the attention of the people in the room who are not white, are not black like me, I have to be of a certain standard. So I have to walk in with a nice suit,
Right.
speak well,
Yeah.
clearly. I have to
Mm.
prove
Be on your
myself.
best behavior.
Exactly. As opposed to someone that's just, like he just walks in, he's fine, everyone's listening. I think that's so basically we do have to adapt. It's
Do you think that's
unfortunate,
the
but
case when you're in Africa as well?
to a certain
Or do you not
extent,
have to do that in Africa?
to a certain extent, yes. I think you see it as well as like in private schools. So, yeah, you do. You actually do. You see it in private schools. So
Yeah.
basically, with like, okay, so many of us probably have cousins that never went to private schools and we went to private schools. And then you take the behaviors that you have back and they're like, whoa, you're that kid, huh?
Is the
Yeah.
cultural is that cultural
That,
clash? It's like, what are you trying
yes,
to aspire to
Mm.
be? Aren't
Rich,
you black?
rich kids, rich kids.
yeah. So
Either
you,
rich
you have
kids
to
or Oreo or something like that.
Oreo, yeah.
Yeah.
exactly.
How about you, Lory? Do you find because I guess for you you've never, I'm just assuming you've never like
Yeah.
lived in Africa for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
So do you feel like you have to acclimatize because you have never like been in Africa? Is there that difference there, or is it just something that's natural to you?
I think there's a difference because I have to adapt to the life there than Africa. So I've heard a lot of things like when you go there as a European, you have to be humble. You don't need to show off that you're European or you come from Germany. You have to adapt to their behavior.
Yeah.
So be humble and don't be like don't show off or to like Miss Know It All or everything. We in Europe we have it like this. We in Germany no, you have to adapt to their life and be like very down to earth. So this is what I've heard a lot, and I think it might be true to adapt to their climate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So for her, it's the opposite actually, to an extent.
Yeah. No, but then don't you do that too back home in Africa, bro?
No, she's talking about when she goes to Africa, isn't it?
Yeah, I know, but I'm saying you too. Don't you have to do that?
Okay.
Yeah, you do too. Like when you're going to meet your family, as Mwiza said, we're going to meet some family that are less well off. I'm pretty sure there's a way you act. There's a
I
way
think
you
people
dress.
assume different personalities depending on who they're talking to. So that's the whole cultural mutant issue. You
Okay.
just you bring the European
mutant.
side when you you have to bring it.
I don't know, man. Sometimes you feel this, as Mwiza said. There are moments. I don't know if Lory would experience this as well, but like when you
Yeah.
go maybe in an area where as you said, in a room, maybe a meeting where it's mostly just like white people. I feel like I'm punching upwards, because
Upwards.
yeah, in my head, I
Sounds
don't
like
know.
an inferiority complex to me. But okay, continue.
Perhaps it is an inferiority complex. Perhaps, maybe, but people don't when they see you as a black person. Like I think the mindset is just like, okay, this guy like probably not going to achieve much. Probably, probably sags his pants, listens to a bunch of hip hop, and
Yeah. I feel like I have to meet the stereotypes sometimes. It's like,
Exactly.
sadly, I don't play basketball,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
like I don't meet all of the stereotypes that people expect. Some people will be like, "Oh, awesome." When you're black, they have these expectations that they like about black people, and they expect you to sign up and fill them up. But then you're like, I'm afraid I don't meet a few of these things. So just bear with me.
Yeah, I mean, like sometimes when I'm walking on the streets, like some kids will walk up to me and be like, 50 Cent, man, what's up? And I'm like, okay, that was a good guess. I like 50 Cent, but but I don't know. Like, I feel like people just generally like, I remember there's a friend of mine who got, like, he passed this professor's class and he came out like top of the class, right? So he had a question about his paper. So he went to his professor and he said, "Yo, I have a question about this paper." And the professor goes like, "Wait, you're the one who got the highest mark?" And he goes like, "Yeah." He goes like,
Wow.
is this your second time doing my class?" He goes like, "No."
Wow.
"Have you ever studied back home in your country?" He's like, "No."
No.
"Are your parents lawyers or
The
something?"
guy's trying to look for any
Yeah,
excuse.
like, he tried so much. He couldn't like believe it. So, like, I don't know. Sometimes, like, I don't know if maybe I could be wrong. Someone could correct me, but you in a classroom, whatever, a meeting, it always feels like you have to go as hard as possible
Do you
because
feel like you have to subdue your African or black side in order for you to be more accepted?
Yeah,
That's for everyone.
I have to be honest. Yeah, man.
Mm.
yeah.
Yeah.
Even Lory as well.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
can agree. I can agree. So you have to sometimes oppress the African behavior so that, especially here where I live in Germany, so that it appreciates you, if I can say
Yeah.
it like that. Yeah.
Do you feel, yeah, and I guess this one's for Lory. Do you feel like there's a little, like, because for us, like, you can say, okay, I'm African, but living in the diaspora. So the base point is that you're African. But for you, you're Afro-German. So, yeah, do you feel like there's a tug of war of identity, like culture-wise? Do you feel like you have to meet up the European German identity at the same time meet your African heritage? Is that
African.
like an issue for you, or is it something that you just like, nah, it's cool?
Before, yes. So I didn't really know where I belong. So when I like before in my like I think secondary school, where with my friends, they were all white. So my friends are white. I come back home, African parents, African family. So I had like I was confused. I had like let's say identity crisis. But
Okay.
from by growing up and everything, I just learned to balance everything. For example, when I call back home or I talk with my grandma, she was like, "Oh, my German lady, how are you?" And I was like,
For real.
"Okay, for real, for real. Oh yeah, my white people over there." I'm like, "Okay, but I'm still African as well." So even there back home, they identify us as like German, white, and so on.
Yeah.
So I had to balance like both. But yeah, before it was
It's a bit of
worse,
like
but
a
now I
discovery
just
to like
try to
balance
adapt
it
to
out.
it. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I think it's also similar. Like, because I can't speak Tonga, right? Sometimes
Yeah.
I go back home and like
Useless.
I go back home and because I can't speak Tonga and people are like, you're just like a white man or something. You're not even.
Yeah, true.
And you're like, bro, you guys taught me like don't speak vernacular the whole time.
They
And
teach you to be as English as
as
possible, and
English.
then when
And then
But then
because
you get older, you have to balance it out yourself,
oh
you
like
have to figure it
bro.
out yourself eventually. Because they teach you, because the way you grow up in this world, I think it's most people, if you've been to a private school, even in a government school, the history that you learn of your own continent is very minimal. I mean, the first history I learned was the Tudors, believe it or
Yeah.
not, in Africa, the Tudors. And your own history, I think there was a moment where one of our history teachers actually was like, you know what, let's take a week off. We're going to learn about African history because this is madness. Because you're very well versed in European or other cultures, and then you kind of have to figure out and construct your own African identity first from your own first hand, your language, your parents, and so on, and also your own cultural like background. Is like I don't speak my native language or something.
So, but the question now is that who you are? Like, could you say, like, sometimes I think to myself and I'm like, okay, am I a fake person? Because, like, when I'm with, when I'm with, like, with different people, I'm different-ish. Like, when I'm with my African brothers and sisters, I'm just like,
Such an warrior.
I'm, a little, I'm a little bit different. I'm not gonna
You know
lie.
what?
It's a little
I have
bit,
a feeling, I have a feeling you're one of those guys, we're chilling together,
yeah.
and then all of a sudden there's another set of guys, and all of a sudden the voice changes, the
The voice.
accent.
What do you do? What do you do when all of them are in the same room?
Like, my whole thing is, so is that who you are? Are you the person that's just, or as you said, a mutant? Are you a mutant that just, like,
I feel like you have to look at it as an outfit.
Nice. That's nice.
Yeah,
As an
I guess. I mean, you dress differently
Outfit.
when you
Yeah.
different occasions, you know. So I
But
guess
then
you
who
have
is
to.
so is all of that you, or is there a real you that you are? Because for me, I feel like Africans ultimately, wherever you are, you're a product of your your history and what you are. I think I read somewhere Cameroonians were protesting over the price of baguettes, the increase in the price of baguettes,
Mhm.
right? So that just shows you historically, that Frenchness is still there. But the Africans, they'll still probably have some of them, and we know even in our own families, there's people who are Christian, devout Christians, but also have traditional superstitions. You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
it's that whole. I think it's just the sum. Yeah, ultimately, it's just the sum of your history.
Okay.
And you're a cultural freak. I think Africa is cultural freaks, to be honest.
But do you think our history plays a part in the need for us to sort of be mutants or mutate ourselves? Like, does it influence why we do this? Like we were slaves, so
Mm.
we held a very low position in society.
Mm.
So does that now translate to us needing to prove ourselves extra in the modern times? So people think we're more than just slaves.
Exactly. Yeah. Like what you said about trying to, but then prove yourself more is also subjective because to be a perfect person, what does that mean? Does it mean to be as British as possible? You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
that's something you have to be able to sort of create your own type of, because when people talk about modern, or this is a modern guy, this is a modern, sophisticated man, the guy will be speaking in perfect English
Mm.
and be dressed in a wonderful suit.
Yeah.
The girl who have a British law degree or something. So there's a high premium on our former colonizers' culture and the things, the thresholds that they hold up. So black people, once they reach those thresholds, that's you've made it.
Mm.
But we don't look at African. Africa also had, before colonization, they also had trade links. They also had their own legal systems and policies. Some were developed, some were not developed. All right. So I'm not saying Africa was just freaking Wakanda or something, but
Mm.
yeah. So I feel like we ultimately were just mutants because colonization wasn't just like oppression or political domination. It was more civilizational disruption. That's what I like to call it. Every aspect has been sort of like shifted around. So yeah, I think yes, our history. We do that because of our history, and we're probably still making sense of it. I mean, it was only 60 years ago, so.
All right. So I guess that was pretty much it. Thank you guys so much for joining us and being the first guests on this podcast. And hopefully
Yeah,
everybody
we shall remember you.
anybody that has anything to add to that can send to our email at africaforDummies@gmail.com. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you guys for
Thank
having us.
you.
In many West African countries, we don't have race as an identifying part of us. So when I went to the US, all I had thought of myself was a Catholic and Igbo. And Nigerian, of course. But then in the US, people would just say things to me about being black, and I would think, I don't even know what that means. But most of all, it was that I started to learn that black wasn't a value-free idea. That to be called black was that people made assumptions about you. There was a professor who was surprised that I wrote the best essay in class. And I realized that he was surprised because he didn't expect a black person to write the best essay. And so for me, it was a learning process. Of course, now I very much identify as black. Ale mason segima.